All right, 9.8, geometric sequences. So the ratio between any two consecutive terms is constant. What that means is you're multiplying or dividing by the same value. Later on, though, you won't want to think about it as dividing as much as you will multiplying by the reciprocal, and we'll get to that later. Determine whether the sequence is geometric, that's what we just talked about, arithmetic, which is where we're adding or subtracting the same number, or neither. And in neither, there might be a pattern, it's just not a pattern that is geometric or arithmetic. So number one, first thing you want to do is figure out how do you go from the first number to the second, second to the third, third to the fourth. And you see the twos I have written. That means we're multiplying by 2 each time. So it's a geometric, and we're multiplying by 2. Number 2, we're adding 5. So it's arithmetic, and we're adding 5. And here, one of the cases you want to recognize that we're multiplying by a half each time. So it's multiplying by a half, and that is geometric. Number 4 is multiplying by 3 each time, so that is geometric. 5, find the next 3 numbers. So you have to figure out the pattern and then the next 3 numbers. So we're dividing by 3. So when you continue dividing by 3, that's what you get. And here's an example where instead of dividing by 3, you want to think of it as multiplying by 1/3. Because when you got 8/3, if you do it on your calculator, you're going to get a 0.8 repeating, I think, or 0.9 repeating. Either way, you don't want it as a decimal, so it's 8/3 and then 8/9. Number 6, multiplying by 2 each time, so you get 136, 272, and 544. Now, before we get into 7 through 10, you need to make sure you understand that we have an equation. You might want to think of it as a formula, but it's an equation for geometric sequences. This is the equation you're going to use when you want to figure out the nth term, the 10th, 20th, 30th term in a sequence. Okay, it can be used, you can use this to figure that out. So number 7, we want to figure out the 9th term. So first, A1 is equal to a -2. A1 means the first term. The first term in the sequence is -2. R is that ratio, what we're multiplying by. You don't want to think of dividing in this one. It has to be multiplying. Okay? In this problem here, we're multiplying by a -5. And the n, it's the 9th term, so n is 9. We substitute all of these values in, so a sub 9, that's what this means. A sub 9 is a sub 9 is equal to a sub 1, which is a -2. Our common ratio, that's why it's R, ratio, is -5, so we put a -5 in there, and then n minus 1, so 9 minus 1 is 8. Remember, you have to do the exponent first, and you have to make sure you include this negative when you do the exponent. So we get a positive 390,625, and then we take that times a -2, and we get a negative 781,250. All right, number 8. Here we are, some of you might think right away dividing by 4. Don't think in this problem, because you're using a ratio, don't think you're going to use divide by 4. You have to think of it as multiplying by 1/4. Okay, that's your R, first term, and your N. So when you substitute into the formula, it is going to be A sub 9 is equal to first term, 512, times the ratio 1/4 to the 8th. Now, when you do this on a calculator, depending on the type of calculator you have, you're either going to have 1 over this, or you're going to have this decimal number. Okay, one or the other. Okay, when you do this times this and round, you're going to get this. If you take this number times the 512, and round, this is what you're going to get. So slightly different answers, but both pretty close. Number 9. Okay, we want to do the 7th term now. For the 7th term, it's, again, a sub 1 is 1. R, our common ratio, is 3. Multiply by 3, multiply by 3, multiply by 3. And n is 7 now. So a sub n will be a sub 7 is equal to first term 1, common ratio 3 to the n minus 1, 6th power. 3 to the 6th power is 729 times 1 is 729. Number 10. Again, don't think of this as dividing by 2. You want to think of it as multiplying by a half. So our first term is 8. Common ratio is 1/2. And n is 7. Substituting the numbers in, first term is 8. Ratio is a half to the 6th power. So you get 1 over 64 times 8, which is 1/8. If you think of the 1/2 as a decimal, it'll be 0.25, which is this number, and it terminates on your calculator. Leave it this way, don't round it. Take it times 8, and you get this number, which is equal to this. If you rounded this, that'll change this answer a little bit, and they won't be equal. So if it stops on the calculator when you do a dividing or a multiplying the 0.5 to the 6th, if it terminates, then you need to not round, is what I'm trying to say there. All right, number 11. Number 11, now we're going to do something a little bit different, and now we're going to write out the equation. So if you remember our equation right here, okay, we're going to write that out with the information we know, but we won't know all of it. So to write out the equation in the nth term, it'll be a sub n, because it's the nth term, is equal to, again, the first term times our common ratio, and our common ratio here as we go across is a -4, multiplying by -4, and then n minus 1. So this will be a sub n equals -2 times a -4 to the n minus 1. Now, if somebody comes back and asks you what's the 12th term is, you could go in here and figure out the 12th term for that sequence. All right, number 12. We're multiplying by a fourth, so our common ratio is 1/4. Our first term is 2/5. So it'll be a sub n is equal to 2/5 times 1/4 and n minus 1. And that's it. That's all you have to do. We're writing an equation. Number 13, we're multiplying by 5. So common ratio is 5. First term is 5, and then n minus 1. Common ratio is 6. So we have 6. First term is 6, n minus 1. Your assignment is page 51, 1 through 13. Notice the last 2 assignments, you had an extra day to work on them, so hopefully you're figuring them out. Remember, it's just like TikTok. If you got to watch the video again, watch the video. Good luck.